Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, where we talk to amazing people doing incredible things that lead the charge of generosity. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that's what makes them awesome. Today, our guest is Brittany Anderson. Brittany is known as the culture queen at Sweet Financial Partners. Ever since she was a little girl, Brittany was always looking for a way to help others and always looking for opportunities for growth. She has used her fear as a driving force and has always turned her fear into possibility, unless it came to spiders. Brittany is an author, speaker, advisor, and a champion for all things good. She gets to better the pond through the Women Forward program to help women gain a better financial future. I'm honored to introduce to you Brittany Anderson. Brittany Anderson from Sweet Financial Services. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your hectic life to be a guest on my Better the Pond podcast. It is fantastic to have you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And we recently changed to Sweet Financial Partners from Services. So there's a little curveball at you.
Oh, we're starting off this way already. Sweet Financial Partners.
I'll keep you on track.
I gotta do more research. That's I can bite honestly. So fantastic to have you. I really, we talked earlier at one point, and I said this is a person I have to get on the podcast because you're doing so many incredible things to better the pond and make the world a better place.
Oh, thank you so much.
So before we jump into all the questions, this is going to be your opportunity to do a little impromptu. So tell my listeners a little bit about Sweet Financial Partners.
Yes, I would be more than happy to. So I have been with this wonderful company it's been almost 14 years now. Essentially, I came in, I was fresh out of college, saw this crazy job ad that I really had no idea exactly what they did in this business, but I was compelled and pulled to it. So we actually are a wealth planning, fully comprehensive firm and have navigated and kind of migrated into focusing solely on our trademarked process called the Dream Architect. So wealth planning is the core business of what we do, but really inspiring people to realize all that's possible in life, to really pursue their biggest dreams. That's where our core focus is. So people spend their whole lives in that accumulation phase of money where you're earning, you're saving, maybe you have a business and you're tucking money away, planning for your future, but people don't always take into account what that distribution phase looks like and how it can actually be meaningful. So it's been a journey, but that's really where we've landed now and looking at how we can enhance that experience even further.
So just as you're speaking there, I was thinking about just, generally from your experience, people, and I agree, you spend this whole big, massive chunk of your life in the accumulation phase. Then it comes to the distribution of it thereafter. But do people really understand what that looks like?
I would say oftentimes no. And, this is what I would liken it to. You get to that retirement stage. And I don't love that word because retirement by definition is like putting somebody out to pasture. And I don't think any of us really want to just be put out to pasture, to be left alone and, fare for whatever it is life has. But people absolutely know what they've come from. You've woken up every day, you go to your business, you run your company. Maybe you have a high profile position and you go there and you have this purpose and this meaning and you're showing up and you know exactly what it is that you need to do. All of a sudden there's this pivot moment where you're going, what's next? Who am I? Like there's an identity crisis that often happens where people have to completely reshape what it is that they're doing, where their focus is, where their attention is, who they're spending time with. You go from being in an industry where you have colleagues, you have people that have similar interests and they're driving some similar targets or goals. And all of a sudden now you're not in that space anymore. So who are you? What's your value? And really, what's your purpose in life? So there is a massive gap. There's a really big gap. And that's why our focus is let's redefine what success means. Let's redefine what purpose means to you. And then obviously your money gets aligned to that.
Mhm. That's really interesting you say that. And just from, how you're modeling with your company is that you're talking about people's dreams, aspirations, goals, purpose first, and talking money second.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
It's
think,
because that's what matters. The money and honestly, investment management, when it boils down, it's kind of a commodity. I mean, you can go and there's very smart people that are out there that can help you manage your money. But if you're not putting it to work for you and you're not looking at how you can create efficiencies within your plan to be able to free up more money to do the things that you want to do, then that takes a little bit more creativity. And if you don't start with the end in mind, it makes it really tough to back into what it is you want to accomplish. So, that is absolutely where we start. And that's the stuff that people like talking about. That's what they
mhm.
really enjoy.
You mean people don't want to sit around and just talk about money?
You know, I, I'll say this. I think that more women should get comfortable talking about money. However, when it comes to, how it's invested and all that, people are like, I don't really need to know like the inner workings of the watch. I just want to know what time it is.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that's really
exactly.
what people are looking for.
So when we get to the things you're doing to better the pond, I have a feeling some of those things are going to reveal itself in what you just said.
Quite possibly.
You might quite possibly. So that being said, I'll try to be a good steward of time. Let's just jump right into the podcast itself. So, Brittany Anderson, I want to know what got you from being a gosling, and I mean like we're going way back to your early roots, like you're just hatched, right? To the time when you left the nest, when you went out on your own, to where you are today. Brittany Anderson, what is your backstory?
Yeah. So I grew up in a single parent household. My brother and I were raised by my mom primarily. And, when you think about these moments of impact in life and kind of maybe what helped you hatch or helped you kind of start that path of wherever the heck you're going to end up, I think back to I was about 8 years old or so. And in my house, like straight shot, I can picture it clear as day, straight shot from our kitchen into my mom's room. And I remember walking by and I look in there and she is sitting on her bed and she's crying over her checkbook. And she's looking at this. And I knew even at that young age that as she's got bills strewn out everywhere and she's, looking around and she's in a total state of overwhelm, she didn't know if she was going to be able to pay to have the roof over our head, the utilities on, and the food on the table all in the same month. And, that moment in time, it was like this thing went off in me that said, I don't ever want to have somebody else's decisions or even just circumstances in life to be able to negatively impact my own well being, but even my future family. So that was really a pivotal moment at a young age where I started looking at how can I create even more opportunity for myself. And then as I started getting older and really looking at the path that I wanted to go down and maybe where I would end up in life, I knew that I wanted to help people and I wanted to help people not go through what she went through. So if you then fast forward a little bit, thinking about, when I was going to college and thinking about what I wanted to do, if you would have said to me, Brittany, you're going to end up in the wealth management field, I would have said that is so not true. I took finances and economics and all those wonderful things in college, and I hated it. The analytical stuff, I was like, man, this is not for me. However, going through college, I was in the corporate world. I actually ended up landing a really great position. I was in a sales role. I was selling jewelry, actually, managing a team. And I learned quickly that the corporate environment was not necessarily aligned with truly being able to help people and truly being able to kind of think outside the box and do things that would add massive value. So bringing me to a certain Sweet Financial Services at the time, they posted a job ad, and I'm reading this and I'm looking at their website, and at that time websites weren't as intricate as they are today, where everything is amazing and there's things flying everywhere and whatever. But I'm looking at that going, there's something about this company that I need to be a part of, and I don't really know what it is. Now, looking back, it was absolutely two things. One, the entrepreneurial environment, the entrepreneurial culture, the encouragement of lifelong learning and serving people at the highest capacity. And then that second part was the client experience. And it was really seeing a company that was doing something a little bit different to help people achieve what they wanted by their definition. So again, we're going to fast forward a little bit. Now, the point that I'm at now, I've had the opportunity to become one of the partners in the firm, and I'm now in the role of the president, and really being able to take this to the next level to better the pond, to better the experience for people, and really help people achieve more than they ever thought was possible, just because people don't always know what possibilities lie out there. So
Fair enough.
that's the story.
That's the backstory. Okay, so now you've got. I am really, really, really curious now. So I do want to take you. I mean, right back to being a gosling.
Yeah.
Were you born and raised in Minnesota?
No, I was actually born in Southern California. My parents, they divorced when I was just about 5. So my mom, the only other place she knew, and for her too, giving her credit, she's living in Southern California going, how am I going to raise 2 kids out here in the hustle and bustle where you spend 2 hours on the freeway just to get home at night? So her sister actually lived in Southern Minnesota, and she packed up my brother and I and said, we're going on an adventure and we're going to try someplace new. And I did end up moving back to Southern California for a few years later in my teenage years. But now home is Southern Minnesota. And I honestly can't see living anywhere else.
So Southern California and all the way over to Minnesota. That was a bit of a climate change as well.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And it was like, I think it was like December that we moved, and you look outside and you're like, snow. Like when you're in Southern California, you might see snow if you go to the mountains, but it's not the same snow. I swear by that. It's not the same snow as what's in Southern Minnesota.
So do you remember that trip? Do you remember the time when all of a sudden you were basically uprooted and say, we're going somewhere else?
Yes, I do. And, it was tough even, and it's interesting because I don't have honestly a ton of memories from when I was real young. There was some tumultuous kind of stuff in our household. And I do remember though, getting ready to leave, and my grandmother had actually been the one that did our daycare and babysat my brother and I. And I remember actually saying goodbye to her. And I remember the road trip, primarily because I got so car sick. That was when my mom discovered that I had this thing with motion sickness, which we won't go down that path. But yeah, I remember that. And I remember it was scary as a kid. And you're starting over and you don't know anyone or anything. I knew I had an aunt and my uncle helped us, drive out there. But other than that, it was kind of like, well, here we go. So yeah, as a kid, I think, definitely scary, but I was also young enough to where it wasn't, you just don't feel the same way as you might as an adult or even a teenager.
Mm-hmm. And so going to a new school, and you were 5, so I guess you're kind of just starting out in your education, but that obviously must have been a little bit of an adventure, and all new friends and all new kids and new.
Yeah. I did. I was in preschool out in California, and I do remember that. And I had a few core friends, and little birthday parties and parents get together, so the kids get together. And yeah, it was all new. Changed. I was part of a little dance studio out there, so I changed to what was out here. And yeah, everything was different. That's for sure.
And then you said you went back to Southern California in your teenage years. So what took you back there?
Yeah. So I wanted to give it a shot living with my dad. I was, even with the divide with my mom and my dad and everything growing up, I very much saw myself as a daddy's girl, and maybe didn't realize all of who he was. And so I decided to go move out there and try it, and talk about uprooting and terrifying. I left like my friends that I had had for how many years. I think it was the summer before my sophomore year in high school, ended up going back to California. So you're going into Southern California, brand new school, people, I didn't know anybody. But it was one of those things where I kind of felt like twofold. If I never tried it, I would have maybe regretted not giving it a shot. Second, I've always been a very like future thinking person, even as a kid. And I really, really wanted to get into the UC system. I don't particularly know why, but they have UCLA, UC San Diego, UC Riverside, UC Berkeley, UC, San Francisco. And I just wanted to be part of that network. And I knew that if I lived there for a couple of years, I could get in-state tuition. So knowing that I was going to have to pay for my own college education, that was something that I had in the forefront. And yeah, so that's kind of two things that I really wanted to experience, and did end up going to UC Riverside and quickly realized I didn't love it as much as I thought. So I ended up moving back to Minnesota to finish college here.
Ah, boy, look at you go traveling across the country.
It's one of those things. I think I finally found my peace.
What jobs did you have in your high school years?
Oh, goodness. I had a few, and I was actually really, really darn fortunate. I worked for, I worked for a clothing company for a little bit, like retail. I also worked for a real estate company, and actually it was a very large, very lucrative real estate company in Southern California. Was mostly receptionist, admin stuff, but I got to see the inner workings of how these people operated, and it was really, really cool. Also worked for a couple of attorneys during high school. So that was an interesting experience because one of the gentlemen in particular, he truly treated me, even at, I think I was 16 years old, treated me like I was a paralegal, like I was a legal secretary. And he didn't look at me as some kid, having a summer job or whatever, but he truly brought me into the full experience. And that I would say that was a major, I don't know if you call it a turning point, but a confidence booster for me to see that somebody who didn't know me up until that point saw potential, believed in me, trusted me to do these things. And that was something that I took with me for a really long time.
So that's interesting. So I mean, obviously you didn't do the average, the teenage jobs of, well, I worked at McDonald's or whatever. I mean, you upped your game right out of the gate.
Yeah. And I was a stubborn kid. I mean, I think back and I'm like, God bless my mother and my father for that matter. But, I was that kid that I never wanted those types of jobs. I wanted something that I felt like I was really contributing, or I was experiencing something different, or felt like I was part of something bigger. So I honestly, I don't even think I ever applied for anything other than these jobs where I was probably out of my league. But it was what intrigued me. It was what was fun. Interesting, I should say.
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that because like so you didn't even want those jobs. Like you didn't want well, I'll call this the average job just to
Yeah.
make some spending money or whatever. Like you wanted to be that's interesting you say, well, I wanted to do something bigger than myself. So if you go back to when you were a kid, do you like back when you were younger, do you see that same pattern in yourself back then of wanting to be always contributing or doing something bigger or bettering the pond in my world? Do you see that?
I definitely do. And I honestly, I've never been asked this question before, so I love this. I think back and there were certain programs and different things that I would find myself wanting to be involved with. One in particular, this actually just came up the other day in a conversation. It was like kids teaching kids, and it was teaching about like safety with seat belts and how you should properly ride in a vehicle. And I'm doing these like seat belt demonstrations for my peers. And I think I was like, I don't know, 12 years old or something. But yeah, I think honestly, for me, I've always been looking for ways to generate money, to generate income. And I think it goes back to, if I could kind of psychoanalyze myself for a minute, I think it goes back to wanting to feel some sense of control for myself and for my future, and not wanting to have to maybe ask for money from my mom. Like I knew there was a struggle there.
Mm-hmm.
So I even think about babysitting jobs. I was like on call for babysitting like every night almost, it felt like especially on the weekends. But I started doing that at a really, really young age. Like I was that kid that was sticking signs on corners by my house and doing car washes at like, I don't know, 10 years old or something, just so I could generate revenue and I could produce something great for them. And it's a win-win. So yeah, it's definitely been a pattern.
So, look, you were trying to look into sort of wealth management as a kid.
Well, maybe I was looking at the accumulation.
You were like the communicate. You're like in the community. But if you think about that, I mean, I think it's fascinating how, and even when you said when you looked at this job here at Sweet Financial, you said there was something about it I wanted to be a part of. I didn't know what it was.
Mm.
And maybe that was just that maybe you didn't know what it was because it was talking to you. You weren't talking to it.
I think that's completely right. And again, it's like it's one of those things where, I mean, you can Google online and look up financial advisor, wealth advisor, and you find a whole slew of different options that come up. But it was different. And I think that's where, if you look at like the truly client centric businesses, the ones that truly want to serve people, and it's not, I mean, obviously any business, it's about profit. Unless you're in a nonprofit organization, you have a profitability focus. But when it's all completely geared towards the experience of the client, that's something special. And I think that's something that's different. I think that honestly, that's what spoke to me.
Mm-hmm. And you wear it well.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So I believe, Brittany, that we are all odd ducks. I believe that we're all misfits. And can you tell me about a time when you didn't fit in, where you were different? I mean, this could be a positive or negative story, but what have you done to stand out, and really what makes you awesome? And I don't mean that from an ego standpoint, but what is it that makes you different, and makes you the odd duck from everyone else? And I want details.
This is loaded. Well, I'll kind of start with maybe the end of your question and then back into the rest. So, one thing that I think is different with me is that I've never really let fear paralyze me. And I've had this way of making fear essentially be a driving force where, maybe some people, you're told in your life, like, you can't do this, or that's silly, or, that's ridiculous, or that's way far fetched. And any comment like that, or any, I guess, negativity in a sense, I've used that to work for me. And I've said, okay, well, I believe I can, so I'm going to. And if it turns out great, then that's wonderful. And if it doesn't, then I learned something and I've stepped outside my box. So I think that is one of the things that has helped me be who I am today. That can also put you in some really bizarre circumstances at times. I think about, I chose kind of I think back to actually college. So funny thing is now I've spoken on stages and been so blessed in that regard. However, again, Brittany, how many years ago, I put off taking a speech class in college because I was literally like paralyzed. Talk about that one time fear did get in my head a little bit. I was so terrified of speaking in front of people. And I just envisioned this like speech class being a place where they throw rotten tomatoes at you and it's just horrible and all of this. So I remember that, again, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going all in. And I chose like a super controversial topic at the time. And I stood up there and gave it my all. And I think half the kids in that class thought I was absolutely nuts. And the teacher was like, bravo, standing ovation and all of that. So I was weird to them, but to the instructor, I was like their golden egg child. So, I mean, I think there's situations like that where I've tried like every sport and I've been in plays and I've, done kind of everything you can think of, because I'm not really afraid to be embarrassed. I guess I don't know how else to say that.
So if you look back to, I think when you were a kid and you're saying, putting the sign on the street corner, they're going to do a car wash or whatever the case was, right? Or, doing the different jobs that you did, or, I mean, if you think about even as in your teenage years, how many would apply to a law firm?
Probably none. I shouldn't say that not none. That's not a fair statement, but probably very few.
Very
And,
few.
I'll say point blank is that I definitely had opportunities where a family member would know somebody. So that's how I maybe would have heard about it in the first place. But it was always up to me to kind of land the role or land the position. So yeah, again, it's just one of those things where I knew what I didn't want. And sometimes that's an easier way to decide what you do want is through process of elimination first.
Right. So say that having no fear, you're driven by fear rather than being paralyzed by fear. And that's what makes you an odd duck.
I think so. And I shouldn't say I don't like I have fear. Like, it's not that I don't have fear, because there are things like I am terrified of.
Spiders.
Every day you wake up and you're like, am I being enough as a leader, as a business owner? Like, I'm kind of scared of what this is. You get imposter syndrome. I question, I'm like, am I showing up as the best mom I can be? And I'm afraid, like, am I raising my kids right? So it's like all these things go through your head all the time. But I think it's just, I just never let it stop me from pursuing what I really, really want.
So, and I was saying, if you have some, fears, I mean, I said spiders.
Oh my gosh, I'm so scared of spiders.
There we go. So now you have one.
Yes, I do. And let me tell you, there was a giant one in my house the other day, and I stared at it for a solid 5 minutes. And I was like, I don't know who's going to go down first, me or you.
And
I did finally get up the nerve to kill it, but it was a lot. It was a lot of brain power to get there.
But again, overcame your fear. See, look at you go.
I squished it. I won.
You won. I love it. Okay, can you tell me about a time, Brittany, when someone did something for you that truly left an impact on your life?
Honestly, I can think of so many amazing people in my life. And, it's one of those things where I'm a firm believer that people show up in your life to either help enhance it or to just create a great opportunity for learning and growth. So I could name a lot of them, but honestly, I think about the founder at Sweet Financial. It's interesting, brief story on this. When I was looking at, getting back into a leadership or kind of a management role, as I kind of climbed up through the ranks at Sweet Financial, when the opportunity came for me to step into that role, Brian was super, super hesitant and doubtful. Like, we hadn't really worked closely. I was working and serving another advisor in the office. Really had not had a ton of interaction with him. And it actually took the recruiter they were working with to be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're offering like a Mercedes to all these people out and about in the world. And you have somebody within your organization that is perfectly capable and could possibly take this role to the next level. Hire Britany, like, put her in that role. He was so skeptical of it, but I will tell you that his, well, first of all, him allowing me to finally step into that role and listening to her was wonderful, but working closely with him and really understanding the mind of the entrepreneur and understanding that I'm not kind of this lone duck over here. Like, you talk about kind of the odd duck. I always did. I felt a little bit strange because I do have this drive within me that people didn't always understand and people couldn't always relate to. So I looked at how he really, encouraged me to get involved with different kind of entrepreneurial type programs or platforms. And really over time, we built a relationship to where he also saw this potential and has, introduced me to different people in my life that have absolutely changed the trajectory of my life now. We have business opportunities together and, growth of this business that we're in. And I really do look at, that opportunity to work closely with him and just his belief in me and being able to open those doors. I mean, he has absolutely been a monumental person in my life, and I'm forever grateful.
So now, do you think that it was the recruiter that got you the job, or was it you, Brittany?
It was me.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out. It was her that recommended, but I had to interview just like everybody else and had this crazy strenuous conversation. But again, it was one of those things where I literally remember I had to do it outside of work hours I was sitting on my couch and I'm having this conversation with this gal. And I was like, you know what? I am showing up as 150% of myself. I know I can do this. I have no stinking clue what this is going to look like. I really hope it pans out, but I know I'm capable. I know I can own this. So yeah, I got the job. She helped open that door to say, what are you doing?
Even better. But I mean, that's a fantastic story, and it's so interesting. I think that, and the reason I have this question on the podcast is just, how one person can positively or negatively, whichever way it goes, right, can really truly impact the trajectory of your life. Just, at one point in time, that things can shift so dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think too, if I think back even early on, I mean, I look at the experiences that my mom had and, her, and I can speak to this honestly because her and I have had this conversation multiple times. She's never had the confidence in herself. Like she is a beautiful, capable, smart individual, but she didn't have the confidence. And that would cause her to maybe not take great leaps of faith or not really pursue what she wants or constantly put her needs on the back burner. And so I even think about that relationship there. I mean, you look at a catalyst, I looked at parts of her life and who she was and things I did want to model after because she is a great human, but things that I also didn't want to carry forward into my own life. So those are pivotal moments. With my dad, like my dad was extremely charismatic. He was that guy that, when you first meet him, you're just like, wow, like he's fun and he's lively and he's high energy. He had some other issues, maybe with some dishonesty and things like that. And he has passed now. But again, it's looking at the parts of even your parents that you maybe don't want to carry forward, but then embracing the parts that you do. So if you look at every person in your life that you've ever encountered or had a relationship with or whatever, I think everybody that we interact with shapes us in some way. You either decide, yeah, I want to be, some part of them or have some part of them, or no, that's not the path that I want. So they influence us in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always go back to the sort of Tony Robbins line of, life happens for you, not to you.
Amen.
And,
Yeah.
and because
Yeah.
all those people that come along your life, and it could be, so it can be go, you either look at a positive or negative, how we want to view it. But they all change that trajectory as you go along in your, on your little journey.
And that's so true. And, I think about, I have a speaking coach that I've used over the years. His name's Joel Weldon. That man has more energy at about, I think he's about 80 now, more energy at nearly 80 years old than most like 20-year-olds have. But, I remember there was a talk that he gave at one of the masterminds I'm part of. And he was talking about how when something bad happens, your framing immediately should be, that's good. And I was sitting in the audience and I remember listening to this talk and knowing who he is as a person and that he's absolutely wonderful and brilliant. But I was thinking, like, I had just lost my sister at the time. And I'm sitting there from that perspective going, how in the world do you shape that that's good? And as he brought this like journey forward on this talk, it was all about how there's so many lessons in everything that happens in life. And if you do have that framing, exactly what you said of things happening for you versus to you and how you grow as a person and how, maybe that loss would help deepen other relationships that you wanted to, or maybe that loss contributes to a realignment of values or whatever that means for a person. So I think that is such a brilliant framing and it just helps you be a better human too, when you think about it that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Oh man, we could talk for days. So again, try to be a good steward of time. So what are you doing right now presently to better the pond? And my bigger question to that is, why are you doing it? So we kind of led into this earlier, and I know with your, Women Forward program and those kind of things like that. So the floor is yours. What are you doing to better the pond, Brittany?
Yes. So right now, the founder, Brian Sweet, and we are looking at how we can take the Dream Architect and make it even bigger, make it almost like a standalone platform that really helps people dive deep into what it is that they want most and encompassing multiple pillars. Because this is where I think if you look at where the world is going and you look at where people's time and focus and energy and attention is best spent, it's not watching the horrible news media. It's not scrolling through social feeds. Like those things don't fill your cup. Oftentimes, if I even catch a glimpse of a news story, I'm like depressed for 4 days because it's not good news. That's what gets clicks. That's what gets opens. But where people should be focusing their attention is, what experiences do you want? How can you look at your own health and your longevity? There's so many advances in the sciences, in medicine, in technology, and there's things out there that when you look at how that directly correlates to your wealth plan, it has a lot to do with it. Because if we're living longer and we're able to be even healthier, that's going to change how you manage your money in the long run. But also looking at, your legacy and that whole what's next, that what am I going to versus what am I coming from? So really looking at building a platform to support people in all of these different areas, to introduce them to other brilliant professionals who already have those platforms built that could potentially help them with an area that they want to focus on. And, my own kind of passion spinoff from that is looking at how we can introduce this more and more to career-focused women who have kids at home, who are also accumulating, decent amounts of wealth, and looking at how they can create opportunity without feeling like they're sacrificing one thing for another. So we've typically worked with, mostly women who have gone through major transitions. So it could be retirement, it could be a business sale, it could be widowhood, it could be divorce, any major kind of turning point in life. We've served those women, and that's been a big focus. But how do we take that even further with that career focus, that career minded businesswoman, and then also enhancing the process along the way for the clients that we work with? So that's how we're really looking at how we can expose people to possibility. That's really what it boils down to.
Does that, that whole idea you just talked about, does that come back to looking down the hallway at your mom with the checkbook?
Oh, I would say probably yes. And it's, there's so often where I think women feel in particular pulled in a lot of directions. Like, my husband can, he can go on a trip or whatever, and people aren't like, ooh, how are you managing that with the kids? Like, he just doesn't get asked that question. But if I go and do something, people are like, ooh, where are the kids at? Who's got them? It's like, what's the difference? Like, we're partners in this. So I think there is, a little bit of that pressure. But yeah, looking back with what my mom went through, and, I think about too, I have a book coming out later this year that shares some of these stories, but really looking at, she didn't have the flexibility to go to some of the events that I was part of. And yes, I had other family members that would go, and that was wonderful. And I feel fortunate for that. But at the same time, when you look out in the crowd and your mom's not there, it's a bummer, right? And there's things that I think can be done where women don't feel like they have to just either work themselves to death to support their family, or they can create a life of like perfect imbalance, I call it. The teeter-totter is never going to be perfectly even. And quite frankly, I don't think you want it to, because then you're at a standstill. But you just have to figure out that limbo. And yeah, I'd love to help more women build confidence, pursue what they want, build their dreams, and not feel like they have to sacrifice one thing for the other.
I love it. Fantastic. And if I may, I want to just add a little bit about you bettering the pond, because we know that you have created a killer culture. You are known as the culture queen of Sweet Financial Partners. And so I just wanted to just, sort of talk a little bit about that. As like, what are you doing to better your pond internally at Sweet? Because that is not an easy task.
It's not. And let me tell you, it's one of those things where it's constantly evolving. Like you feel like you're at a good pace, and you've got that really positive momentum in the business, and then something happens and you're like, door slam in your face, you got to pivot and go a different direction. So, really what it boils down to, and we've had the great opportunity to coach other advisors, and that's where that whole culture queen came about, is basically being able to help people build their cultures and define what culture means. Because it's not just like a ping pong table in a room and open bar at 3:30 every day. Like, that's cool, but that's not really what culture means. It's about creating a vision that you can share in a clear, concise, and eloquent manner, and making sure that you have team members that are aligned towards it and that you're all working towards this common goal. Be it everybody's going to have a little bit of a different role in it, but you have to be clear and opening those lines of communication and making sure people understand what you're doing. I was actually at a training. It was with Dr. Alan Zimmerman, who is brilliant with, human dynamics, basically. But he said something that was like, if you're not telling the story, if you're not clearly communicating, they're gonna make it up. And that has stuck with me because I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so true. If you're not transparent, you're not telling them what the culture is, you're not talking about the vision and what the company means, they're going to make up their own stories. And those stories often are not really what you want. So yeah, it really boils down to having a clear vision that you can articulate and that you can get and rally people behind, and making sure you've got the hiring practices in place to find those right fit people.
I just made a note of that. That is a fantastic line
Isn't it so good?
it's so true. And so, just briefly, what is your secret sauce, Brittany? Like, what is it, that you're doing so well that is basically aligning it? Is it the clear communication? Is it just by listening? What's your secret sauce?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of like the empathetic gene that I have in myself, to where instead of trying to be understood, because that's where there's a misconception. You can't get on a platform, or I shouldn't say you can't. You can if you want to, but it's not a good idea to get on a platform and just preach to what the vision is and to just basically wordsmith it. You have to really meet people where they're at. And I think for me, I have that empathetic approach to where I want to hear, and I want to see where you're at, and I want to understand what makes you tick. And I want to understand like why you make decisions the way that you do, because that allows us to help play on people's strengths. So, this is a Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach thing. I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. But he talks about how, the best time spent is working on enhancing your strengths versus trying to sharpen your weaknesses. Because if you do the latter, all you're ever going to have is strong weaknesses, which isn't super helpful. So that's part of what my focus is really, again, meeting people where they're at, but helping them uncover and develop their strengths, lean into it, take ownership, turn accountability into a positive word versus a negative, which I think it often is, and really letting people just soar and do their roles and do their jobs and do them so exponentially well, giving them the freedom to fly. So I think that's been helpful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think it's correct. I've been part of Strategic Coach as well, and it's progress, not perfection, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
And so allowing people just to be themselves within that, I think is so valuable. So you can get your soapbox, you can preach all you want, but right, if you don't give people the freedom to be themselves, they will either they'll disengage, or again they'll make up stories, or they'll just go somewhere else.
Yep, that's 100% true. And it's also one of those things where I think as companies grow and evolve, and your vision grows and evolves, there's oftentimes going to be people that maybe they've been great people, great employees, but they just don't fit anymore.
Yep.
And I think that's where people get stuck, where you feel like you have to, because they've got you to this point, so you can't let go. And the biggest disservice you can do for them and for your company is to hold on too. So it's the whole adage of what got you here won't get you there, and really being mindful of that. And that's honestly probably, when I think about all of the different, business owners, entrepreneurs that I've worked with over the years, and this is all walks of life, every industry, that can be the hardest thing for people to execute on, because you get this sense of like loyalty, and it can be really, really hard to part ways, but there's really effective ways to do it. And I think that's where people can excel and accelerate their culture even further if they take action there.
Yeah. And I believe there's something to be said for being a great company to be from.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. And when you help them move on and do something else, let them grow, and you're a great company that they were from, right?
Yes.
Instead of the company going to.
Yeah. And I think you bring up such a great point there, because if you give them the freedom, again, to fly in that sense, the freedom to kind of do that breakaway, you are basically avoiding what could potentially be a really nasty, ugly situation. Because it's a lot easier to help people go somewhere else than it is to fire somebody. I mean,
Yes.
that's not fun.
No.
And nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody. I know some people that thrive on that, but most of us don't love that.
I'm in that pool. I do not,
Yeah.
that's nothing I've ever enjoyed. All right. So looking back and looking forward, Brittany, can you paint me a picture of your golden pond? What does the future look like for you?
Yeah. I look at for myself, I have been guilty of associating busyness with worth. And to my own detriment. I mean, there's been so many times where I am burning the midnight oil and I'm saying yes to everything because why not? And so for me, honestly, when I look at, creating that golden pond and what's in the future, it's saying no to what doesn't serve that bigger mission and that bigger purpose, and really being able to redefine what worth is, and what it means to me. And for me, it's honestly, it's bigger impact, less time head down, and really being able to take advantage of the wonderful talent and capabilities, the who's out there per se, that can help you get to things even faster versus being the lone ranger. So that's what I look at for my future.
I love it. And there's a lot of power in saying no,
Oh, yeah.
right? There's a lot of power there. But a lot of times we're afraid to do so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I guess if that's one fear, maybe
I was
that's
gonna
one that
say,
I've had to overcome.
I was just gonna go there. I'm gonna
You just caught me.
there we go. All right. So I have one last question for you here, Brittany, which was not on your list when I prepped you earlier. If you were standing on the top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
Mm, I think I would have to go back to the fear commentary, and I would say, don't let fear get in the way of possibility.
Hmm. Very wise. Very, very wise. Well stated.
Good. Phew, passed the test.
So, Brittany, I really want to thank you for your time to be a guest on the podcast today. I love your stories. I love the fact that your whole drive and your no fear, but also utilizing that and the stories from your mom and your past and along your journey to better the pond, to make the world a better place, and also to be helping women understand finances and those kind of things like that. I think it's remarkable what you're doing to make the world a better place.
Thank you.
So if anybody wanted to go find you, and we got to put the plug out for your books and whatnot as well, we got to do that. So where would we find your books, and where do we go to find you?
Yes. Simple way, sweetfinancial.com, SWEET. We will absolutely have the books available through links there. You can also reach out to me through the website. I also respond to any email. I mean, if you're looking for a listening ear or input on what you're doing or whatever, Britany@sweetfinancial.com. And I can make sure I give you all the fun social links and everything as part of the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. Got to make sure that people can get out and find you. Because I mean, you're serving such an important need out in the world. And I believe that most people, just like when growing up, I mean, who taught you about finances, right?
Yeah.
I sure didn't.
Oof.
Right, I had to figure it out the hard way. So if you have that information for people to help them along their path at a younger age, man, it would make a huge impact.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. All right, so there we had a great time here with Britany from Sweet Financial Partners.
Got it.
And this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you, Britany.
Thank you.